So what we're going to finish up the day with, we're going to discuss our web soil survey that NRCS has, and we'll also discuss our electronic field office technical guide. Both of these are online resources that you guys might be able to find really helpful. So what is the purpose of the web soil survey? Well, Randy explained a lot of that. Essentially what the soils are, they're the foundation to your house. They're the foundation for your operation. That's going to determine the soils that are there, approximate productivity that you might have out in your field, if there's any limitations regarding that crop productivity, if it might be irrigable ground, if there might be salinity issues that would accompany that. It'll give you an idea of what slopes you might have out there. So how you can get to the web soil survey, and you have a copy of this PowerPoint, and so this link is also in that printout. But you can go to websoilsurvey.sc.egov.usda.gov, because we're the federal government and we can't make anything really short. And so when you get to that page, or you can just Google it, just NRCS Web Soil Survey. So when you get to this page, you'll click the green button to start Web Soil Survey, and then it'll bring you to this page. So there's a few different ways that you can navigate to where you want to go. You can either enter in the address, you can pull up the state and county soil survey area. You can look up through, if you know your latitude and longitude, and if you do, I'm pretty impressed. You can also look up by your legal description, a few different things like that, or else you can also look at some of these different agency-owned land as well. So usually how I'll do it, I'll just pull it up by the state and county. You can also use the zoom or the zoom out buttons. There's a pan button. You can go back to the previous view. This shows looking up by the soil survey area. So for Bighorn County, what you're going to typically use is the Bighorn County area for Montana. There's also Rosebud County area and part of Bighorn County, and where you're gonna be using that is going to be this portion if you live in this part of Bighorn County. And again, this shows some of these ways that you can navigate. This is what we call the area of interest. You can so like on this map, we've zoomed in to a field here. And so if you wanted to delineate this specific field and you wanted to know what soils are there, you can select that button and just kind of click the boundary of that field. And so this shows the boundary of that field. This is kind of what you're going to get, and then there's some tabs up here. And you can click on the Soil Map tab. And then that'll pull up your soil map. One thing that you can do here, you can create a printable version of that soils map right there. And it'll have this table with the different soil types. It'll have the map unit symbol, the map unit name, the acres that's in this approximate area of interest, and then the percent that those soils are in there. And that can be really helpful to know specific percentages of what kind of soils are in your field. Because then what you can start doing is you can go into the Soil Data Explorer and you can look up some different maps. This is an example of what the printable version of a soils map is going to look like. The first page will be the actual field. The second page will be the map legend and the map information, and then the third page is going to be the map legend. So then if you go on the Soil Data Explorer, this has a lot of sub-tabs that you can look up for different different soils reports that you want to look at. So one that's really helpful is land classifications, and there are things that you can look up, hydric rating by map unit, farmland classification, irrigated capability classes. Those are all going to give you some ideas on if your soil is going to be appropriate for irrigation. So this example that I used on here was just pulling up the ecological site name. So you can select that as a report, and you can look at the different options for what kind of ecological sites you want to use. And ecological sites, we use that when we're doing range inventories. An ecological site is based off of the soil type that's there. It's going to tell us the different types of plants that we can expect to have in that specific location. And then you can click on View Rating, and that's going to pull up that soils report, and that'll tell you based off of those soils there what type of an ecological site. There's a lot of silty and clay ecological sites there, which that's pretty common for Bighorn County. Let's see. Another tab you can look at here is Ecological Site Assessment, and that's going to give you a little more information about some of these ecological sites. And this shows kind of in a little more detail based off of the different components. Because for each soil type, so there might be a haversome loam, and there's different components within that soil type. So there can be some minute changes that it can that can result in, you know, a different type of ecological site. You might have a slightly different soil type. It can affect the different components of that soil type. Can mean you know, a difference in irrigation suitability. There might be restrictive layers that might make it difficult for irrigation water to infiltrate through some of those soil types. So that gives you an idea of the web soil survey. So you've got copies of that PowerPoint, so if you wanted to go back and look through it, I just recommend going to the website and playing around with some of those different soils reports. If you come across something that you ever have a question about, you're just not really sure, you know, if this soils report is applicable or not, by all means, any of your NRCS field office staff are more than happy to walk you through that process and explain, you know, what different soils reports might mean. So another tool that is really helpful is our electronic field office technical guide. So like Randy said, we're a technical agency. So for short, we call it our eFOTG, because we're also the federal government and we use a lot of alphabet soup. So our eFOTG, this is our scientific-based reference that we use for conservation activities. So this has our standards and specifications for structural, vegetative, and management practices. This has cost list information for our Farm Bill programs. It has other scientific information as well that we can use for our day-to-day field office activities. And again, here's the link to our website. So some examples of some helpful maps that you can pull off is the major land resource area. That's helpful if you're doing range inventory work, because one thing that we have is, you know, we have our soil surveys. There's also different climate areas. If you look at Bighorn County, we have about 4 different major land resource areas. I think that's what really makes Bighorn County unique, is because we have a varying landscape. We have some mountains, we have some mountain foothills, we have irrigated cropland, we have dry cropland. We see some different precipitation amounts. So some of the different major land resource areas that we have is northern rolling plains, the northern part, the southern part. We have central Rocky Mountains, and we have northern Rocky Mountain foothills. So say you want to look at, if you look at your soil type on some of your rangeland, and it's a clayey soil type, you want to know the major land resource area that soil is located in, because we have separate ecological site descriptions based off of those MLRAs. Another helpful map that we have is annual precipitation maps. So this shows Bighorn County. We have a lot of yellows and oranges. Mostly what we have is going to be more of the orange colors, but you know, when you get a little closer to the Pryor Mountains, the Wolf Mountains, down to the Bighorn Mountains, you're going to see a little higher precipitation than what we do around Hardin here. So you go to the eFOTG, you're going to get to this site where you're going to select Montana. You'll select Bighorn County and click on that. And the eFOTG is separated into 5 different sections. So section 1 is going to have some of our cost data that we have for our farm bill programs. That's going to show you some of our cost lists. We have some different maps, like those precipitation, MLRA maps that I showed you earlier. That would be where that would be located. And then we just have a few other helpful information that we use. In section 2, we have our soils information, more climatic data, forage suitability groups, ecological site descriptions. Section 3 has what we call resource management system information, so resource quality criteria for a resource management system. That goes over some of the resource concerns that we look at on farming or ranching operations, and some of the different methods that we use to determine if something is a specific resource concern. Let's see, section 4 is going to be the most common part of our eFOTG that you guys might have an interest in. What we use for our day-to-day work is in this section 4, and this has our conservation practices. And so you're going to find information on our standards and specs for different things like sprinkler system for center pivot or wheel line irrigation. Irrigation pipeline standards and specifications are in there. Irrigation water management standards and specs and job sheets are located in there. And I know some of this screen stuff is a little difficult to read. This just shows looking up major land resource areas and then the different ecological sites that are located in them. That just gives you an idea of what we have in that electronic field office technical guide. And same thing with Web Soils Survey. I'd encourage you guys to, if you have the time and the internet connection, go take a look at some of those websites. You might be surprised at some of the helpful information that you can access there. And just as a reminder, Montana NRCS has field offices located in every county in Montana, and then also on every Indian reservation in Montana. This gives you a list of our different field office locations, and then also the contact information for the Hardin Field Office, Crow Agency, and Lame Deer Field Offices. If you ever have any questions about some of the information that you learned today, or just any other general questions that you'd like to run by us, by all means, feel free to give us a call at any of those phone numbers, and we would be happy to help you guys out. So do you guys have any questions for me? Yep.
Is the actual soil taxonomy with for each soil taxonomic, whatever you call it, species or whatever, is it all in that soil map thing too? In other words, you can see what the B1 layer is and the depth of that and its characteristics, and the B2 and the B2T and all that stuff.
There's different reports where you can run for the soil profile,
Okay.
like depth to bedrock, things like that.
That would be listed under the general soil description, that report that he's
Okay.
referring to.
Okay, so it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would be.
it should be.
It wouldn't be the summary, it'd be the full one.
So when she showed what was it, Henderson or Halverson or something, you can find a
Yep.
page in there that
Yeah.
will give you
Yep.
all those.
Yep,
It
it'll
tells
give
you what each horizon is.
Each horizon,
depth.
that's what I was looking for, yeah.
Yep.
What is your B, the depth of your B, and then your CCA or
This
whatever,
row.
whether you got a CCA or whatever.
Typically, they go down to 60 inches unless there's a restriction.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know, like, for example, if there's a hard pan associated with that,
Mhm.
and
Yep, it'll show that.
So yeah, any more questions? All right, well, I'd like to thank you guys for coming out here this afternoon. I hope you guys found it helpful. Before you leave, if you wanted to grab a bottle of water. Also, if you know of anyone that might find this information helpful, there's still a few folders on the table, so feel free to grab 1 or 2 and take that home with you and share with anyone you think might be interested. I can also leave my business card on the table, so if you wanted to give us a call and visit with us a little bit more about some of this stuff, by all means, we'd be more than happy to help you. But other than that, just thanks again, and you guys have safe travels home.
thank you.